Hi, everyone. I'm Ashish, the founder and CEO of Level AI. Really excited to host this webinar today with Christina from Forrester Research, where we wanted to together talk about the AI vision for the modern contact center. Looking forward to the discussion. Christina, brief introduction from you.
I'm excited to be here, and thanks everybody for taking an hour of your day to spend here with us. Like she said, I'm Christina McAllister. I'm a senior analyst here at Forrester, and I cover conversation intelligence, agent-facing technologies, and I have a bit of a special focus on really where AI and agents meet in the contact center, which is really a lot of what we're going to be talking about today.
Thank you so much, Christina. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's get into it. Just have to cut that part out. It's all cool. Awesome. Great. So every year, Forrester does our CX index survey. And the CX index measures really how successfully a company delivers customer experiences that create and sustain customer loyalty. And almost every year, if not literally every year, these are the three things that come up as some of the most important drivers in a customer's perception of that CX quality. And if you haven't noticed, all of these things have to do with the agent customer touch point. Is that agent knowledgeable? Does an agent resolve issues quickly? Can they help you with whatever it is that you came there to do without needing to involve their supervisor? Or in short, do the agents have the knowledge, the autonomy to solve customer problems quickly and efficiently? And if you get these things right, you get happier and more loyal customers. But unfortunately, we're not really building customer service journeys that really set us up to win here. So customer journeys end up looking a little bit more like this, right? The customer might start on digital, maybe they get to that mediocre FAQ page, and of course there's a bot that's designed to contain that context, but maybe is limited in what it can support, and there's really maybe no obvious way to get to a human being. So it's no surprise that a customer, by the time they get to the agent, that agent inevitably has no clue why they're calling, who they are, and it puts a lot of pressure on that agent touch point because they're consistently on the other end of this weird customer service obstacle course, dealing with customers that, again, they just want to resolve an issue, right? They have a need and they want to solve it. And at the end of the day, we've underinvested in the agent tooling, which inevitably leaves that agent in a situation where they're not well equipped to actually support that need and fulfill those three drivers that we just talked about. But the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way. So NTT, they do a global customer experience benchmark every year. And in 2021, they asked customer experience leaders, what would do the most to improve or reshape that CX capability? And the top two are employee enablement and employee enhancement. So finally, we're really recognizing the importance of enabling that that human touch point. But we have to stop trying to make a contact center that looks like this, right? We've overinvested in automation, but we can't automate this job away. I have spent the majority of my career watching companies try. It can't be done, not today. So we got to move away from automation, and we have to move towards augmentation. We need to support our agents with technology, to give them AI partners, to really support them in their work, to enable better connection with customers, to build more intelligence in contact center operations. And the market for this technology, the conversation intelligence space, as we call it at Forrester, is heating up in a big way. But it's really important that we be mindful when we're pairing AI and humans, because unfortunately, some solutions miss the mark and really don't deliver the value that is needed. AI solutions that say things like, your customer's frustrated. Hey, you've had your customer on hold for a while. The agent knows that the customer's frustrated. He is yelling at them, and he said the words, I'm frustrated, right? And they've had them on hold for a while because it takes that long for them to navigate those back-end workflows and find the information that they need to help the customer. This is not a helpful application of AI. So if you think about what the alternative could be, AI systems could act as co-pilots or a GPS system, right? Helping agents navigate those conversations with ease. And rather than flagging that a customer is angry, right? Thanks, I know. It can provide helpful de-escalation tips that an agent had practiced in role plays offline. The AI can navigate to systems on behalf of the agent and pull relevant information that will help in that conversation. Or maybe suggest relevant offers that would be based on the intent of the conversation, but also other variables like what products do they already have, or what's their usage or their billing history. Let the machine do all of those calculations and leave your agent the room to have meaningful conversations with your customers. But they're still delivering the value. They're just supported and elevated by that AI co-pilot. So the value to the agent is super obvious, but there's a ton of business value here too. And as a quick visualization or kind of a thought experiment, if you will, of the bit of a difference in approach, on the left, you have 20% of your calls being fully automated. So like in the empty circles there. In other words, contained by a chatbot or an IVR, which of course is super great. There's lots of value. 20% is 20%. But there's going to be diminishing returns here. We mentioned before, you can't automate 100% of your calls. So on the right, you have 100% of your calls being partially automated. So you can see that overall, there's going to be real multifaceted value in this approach, clear ROI through reduced handle time, reduced training time, and other benefits like improved and more timely coaching and overall improved experience for your agents, because now they're supported across every call with their AI partner. They feel more confident, they can be more productive. And almost all of this is greenfield for most companies. So 2%, any guesses on what this number means? And if you guess that it is the percentage of agent calls that are typically scored in a quality management program, you would be correct. And if you think about your job today, whatever it is that you do for work, if you imagine your employee review is based on a random sampling of 2% of your work actions, no thank you, I would not want to do that. And I'm not much of a baseball fan myself, but my husband was watching a lot of the Blue Jays games, so I've been inspired. If you imagine seeing a baseball player strike out of one at bat and decide, you know, he had a bad game, he shouldn't even be on this team, but you don't understand the rest of the context, like, did they win, right? Did they win the game? What about the next inning? Did this person help other batters get on base? Maybe they got out, but they ended up getting a couple of runs. Or maybe the coach told the player to bunt. There are so many variables that are missed when you look at the partial picture, and the same thing goes for your agents. And modern conversation intelligence platforms enable automated QA scoring to be able to record, transcribe, and score 100% of your agent's calls, which puts the calls that the quality analyst does review into context with the agent's overall performance, just like the other innings in that game. So if you think about a scenario where an agent has 15% higher average handle time than their peers 1 week, for example, but then you dig in and you see, actually, this agent handled the highest percentage of complex calls, and all of these calls had really high NPS scores. So what would have looked like a problem if you picked one out actually makes a ton of sense in context. Complex calls take longer, so the average handle time is explained, but their performance was great. They should get a kudos. But with the old way of evaluating calls, you really miss that context, and you'd be managing to the clock versus managing to the experience. And on the flip side, one of our Forrester clients shared a story about finding an unusual amount of silence time for a particular group of agents. And so when they dug in and took a look at, like, what do all these calls look like, they were able to see that this silence time was related to a very similar process flow in a call. All of the agents were having trouble with a new e-signature product that they just launched. So that was present across a bunch of different call types, making it kind of hard to connect them. So they were able, in response to this, to launch new knowledge articles, new spot training to really get ahead of that issue. And of course, that silence time decreased. So these are the kinds of inefficiencies that are invisible without being able to look at all of the agent performance scores in context with the rest of your information, whether that be all of the other calls that they do, but also your customer outcome data or your cross-channel information from other channels that your customers are engaging with. Now, in this model, QA time is now spent on a much more valuable responsibility, which is identifying opportunities for feedback and coaching instead of kind of looking through all of the calls and trying to pin and transcribe on their own. That's not a good use of human effort. And now, in a perfect world, all of these pieces work as an integrated feedback loop, right? So you have your real-time coaching, supporting agents during the conversation. You have post-call analytics or post-contact analytics run on each conversation after the fact. You have the ability to score, again, 100% of the agent's conversations, and that platform can flag relevant conversations for further review by a supervisor or quality analyst. And you could flag these for a number of reasons, right? So calls where the agent missed the mark on a particular score element, or calls where the agent did particularly well. And the supervisor or QA can now, really provide targeted coaching specifically based on the growth areas for that particular agent. So rather than, basically random spot checks where you don't understand their performance in context. So say an agent's really struggling with a particular topic, if they need help with, for example, objection handling or de-escalation techniques, the supervisor can select a real-time module that they can then schedule to be live for that agent in the very next call. And if you imagine this all working together, you can see that this would be a virtuous cycle of learning and improvement. Because at the end of the day, You shouldn't be relying on a robot to teach your agent new skills, right? We have a whole ecosystem of professionals for a reason in operations. That's what offline coaching is for. We've all been in that situation, after, say, for example, a presentation or a test or an interview where we said, I really could have done this better. I should have done this or that or this. But had we been given that support in the form of a reminder from our AI copilot exactly in the moment when that skill was necessary, probably wouldn't have missed it. So it's really that dance of the real time and the offline coaching that makes this experience sing. One of our clients at Forrester said this one time, that customer service doesn't generate its own demand. And of course that's true, right? People aren't calling the IVR to see what's going on, to check out the menu options or whatever. They're calling with a task in mind or a purpose. And that purpose generally has very little to do with customer service, the department, right? It might be an issue with a product, or we're getting help with something that they tried to do on the website, or a question about a promotion, any number of things. And that same person said that customer service lives in the land of symptoms, which I really quite liked. Customers come to the contact center describing things that might be going wrong in the experience. They don't necessarily know, they're not going to tell you exactly what was wrong, but they'll tell you how it impacted them, which means that customer service really becomes a great beacon for potential issues that crop up elsewhere in the business. If you take an intentional analytics approach, contact centers can capture insights about issues occurring anywhere in the business across different departments. And a contact center might see, like in this example, some competitive intel crop up around a new product that their biggest competitor launched. These calls might potentially represent their biggest churn risks, and they might want to send this information to the marketing or the product team, right? This is intelligence that has value far beyond the contact center. And typically, this kind of insight would come in the form of VOC surveys, which of course is super valuable. It's very critical to listen to direct customer feedback, but survey response rates aren't typically super high, and it is hard to justify making decisions on a sample size of like 5 or 10. So being able to correlate those survey insights with trends across every single conversation that you have with your customers, that allows businesses to quantify the impact of a given change much more easily, and then you can prioritize your changes accordingly. And at the end of the day, there are tons of different opportunities to pair people and AI in the contact center, from the agent to the analyst to the ops leader, really to augment and enhance natural human capabilities and to really leverage all of that unstructured data to make meaningful change across the business. And I hope you found that interesting and gave you a few things to think about in your own contact center. I'm going to hand things off to Ashish from Level AI to tell us a little bit more about their perspective on this space. And then we're both going to come back to chat about some industry trends.
Thanks, Christina. That was fascinating. I really enjoyed the discussion about sort of AI augmenting humans. That's one of the reasons we started Level AI while I was in Amazon's Alexa team. One of the key things which we found was the limitation of Alexa or any other AI system, for example, to have a freewheeling conversation with humans, and that was really clear to us that this technology is best applied as sort of like an ambient listening and support technology, as opposed to a fully automated nirvana, which is not going to happen anytime soon. So then the question becomes, how do you marry the two things together in a use case by use case in a realistic way to deliver the most business impact? And that's what we are trying to do. Yes,
exactly.
Cool. So in my talk, I want to talk about how Level AI approaches this overall transformation of the contact center. And hopefully we will try to dive deeper into not just sort of AI as a broad category, but specific use cases and touch points of AI within the contact center. So if I look at the journey which Christina almost mentioned, I think we think of this in 4 key steps. Right from a call, the maze which Christina showed, a call coming to the contact center and how an agent experiences it. We have all of these are different touch points of AI in our view. So you have chatbots, IVRs, and virtual assistants, the stuff which actually Level AI doesn't work on, but customers experience it and is part of the contact center leaders stack. The second piece is, while an agent is engaging with a customer during the call, what are the opportunities of real-time coaching and enabling a customer? Now, this category gets confused a little bit when Agent Assist is used as a silver bullet to describe all the things. I would propose that we almost think about it as one is that real-time sort of coaching aspect, but then there's also potentially next best actions which are linked to the customer context, which are linked to the specific scenario which an agent is facing. While assist is more about behavioral recommendations and even knowledge recommendations as they're going on the fly. The third part is conversation monitoring. Now, while the conversation is going on, can we help to create even mechanisms such that if needed, a manager can interject? Someone else in the team can help out in a specific situation. For that, you need to be able to monitor and create those mechanisms to alert potentially anyone in the contact center and anyone in the team. And finally, there's an ability to automate some of the repeat actions which are happening by the agent in terms of data entry and so on. Now, as if we keep on tracking the agent journey, just post call, when we talk to our customers, there's a lot of automation opportunity there. In a lot of cases, the wrap time of a call is about 30 to 40% of the overall call handling time, right? So that is a big opportunity as well. And finally, if this is not married with a robust quality assurance program and analytics and voice of the customer program, the circle which Christina, or the journey, the feedback loop which Christina talked about, is not complete. And when we talk to our customers, we talk about partnering with solutions which can take you on this entire journey together and not go for piecemeal solutions, because otherwise your assist system will not talk to the automation system, will not talk to the quality assurance and analytics system, and we'll be coming up with almost different sort of views of how your business is run or how your contact center is run. So it almost needs to be one intelligent system underlying it, and contact center leaders, in our view, need to plan for this entire journey. How do you start? Where do you start from this, right? And then how do you evolve into different levels of it? And we'd love to talk about more of that in our session later. So when we think of, but now the challenge is there's a little bit of a detail here. Conversational intelligence, it turns out, is really hard. You can't stick on sort of AI on a tool and make the conversation intelligence problem go away. What do I mean by that? So, and one of the examples which was mentioned earlier in Christina's talk, and in general, finding keywords and finding a customer is frustrated is okay, but language intelligence is much more complex than that. On the right-hand side, I talk about a very simple scenario. Someone calls in and wants to cancel an account. You know what? You can use similar words to explain completely different intents. I want to cancel my account, or I do not want to cancel my account, just want it paused, has 70% of the words in common, but the just want it paused makes the entire difference, right? So if you or you could say, I would never cancel my account. So even that sentence has cancel my account in it, right? And every business has hundreds of these unique business scenarios. And what most AI systems do is manual keyword matching for cancel my account. And guess what? If you did it in this scenario, it would be wrong 66% of the time, because you are hearing for cancel my account while there are two other intents which are completely missed, right? Now, if you build an agent assist program based on a matching technology, or an analytics program based on matching, or a voice of customer program, guess what? It will be wrong 66% of the time. That's a lot. That's the whole ball game, right? So that is what fundamentally these systems need to solve. So, and this bad conversation intelligence shows up in product experience, shows up in your business decisions. So we would humbly posit that a lot of what you are seeing is stuck in the 2000s almost, with these word clouds which have cancel my account 1,000 times, and then the customer is either frustrated or super happy. That's not actionable. That's not what you can build a robust agent assist program on. That's not what you can build a robust QA program on. So the good news is that the world is changing. AI is changing at a very fast speed, and we don't need to settle for the old tools. What is base case in 2022 is that what used to be the superpower of speech to text transcription is almost a commodity. There are many off-the-shelf models which can produce what we call word error rates in our space, which is the percentage of words which a transcription system gets wrong. You can get off-the-shelf models with 5 to 10% word error rates. You don't need to settle for 3 months, 6 months old long onboarding times. Send a vendor a bunch of your data and then wait for 6 months for the AI to be trained. There are pre-trained large natural language understanding models available. And then finally, the space is moving really fast. The compute capacity is doubling every 3 to 4 months. So if your vendor is changing their quality every 4 months and the performance every few months, you don't need to settle for that. What can these new changes deliver for you? And this is going back to that view we talked about the entire cycle. You can automate this QA performance. The 2% random selection-based reviews, which we talked about earlier, that doesn't have to be a reality. The very high level customer, X percentage of customers are frustrated, that doesn't have to be a reality. We can get deep conversation analytics on agent performance or entire contact center performance. And we can automate and augment in real-time agent workflows. And all of this can be done in real time across all channels. You don't need a separate vendor for voice channels. You don't need a separate vendor for text channels, email, and chat. The base case should be language models should work out of the box for all channels. So what does a complete contact center intelligence platform looks like? There are 4 key pillars: AI-driven quality assurance, conversational analytics, automation, and live agent assist. Level AI offers all 4 of those. We offer automated scoring, performance analytics, coaching, both post-call and in real time for our agents, and then combining that QA, CRM, and conversational AI data into one view for our customers and our agents to improve on a daily basis. That one single scorecard or dashboard view is the holy grail for our agents and for our contact center leaders. We find it so many times. And I'll show you in a second what does deep mean in terms of agent performance, in terms of conversational analytics. But it's really, you don't have to settle for customer frustration or the number of issues. There's a lot which is changing in the space, which can give you much deeper insights on the happenings in the contact center. Automation. So Level AI combines the listening capability, where we are reviewing the conversations, with the ability to do agent desktop monitoring or recording. So combining the entire flow for the agent. So again, you don't have to go for another vendor to be able to say, okay, got it, I have to conversational analytics at one place, screen monitoring another place. I can't marry those 2 data sources. You want one integrated analytics and intelligence view, automating agent workflows. And for some modern contact centers, the last piece is often the most important, where they have taken care of the first 3 foundational pieces in our view and are now looking for real-time agent coaching, knowledge. And this has to be supported by deep knowledge integrations. You can't just have next best action, but your knowledge bases, which are sitting in many places within the organization. It could be support articles, it could be content sitting in your knowledge bases, cannot be left alone in its own silo. We really need to power these agents with all data which we can potentially get. One of the top problems which we hear from contact center leaders is that agents spend 30-40% of their calls looking for stuff, right? The problem is the agent assist system doesn't link with the knowledge sources. And it's just step-by-step guidance, or as we discussed earlier, the agent assist system is saying the customer is frustrated, which doesn't solve the problem. So what does this look like? So I talked about sort of automated QA. Over the next few slides, I'll quickly give you a preview of what the promised land looks like. So we have a capability, we call it InstaScore, which automatically scores, up to 100% of conversations. The problem, as we discussed before, QA teams only get feedback based on 1 to 2% of conversations. So a conversation, we have a conversation monitoring system which takes your rubric, and you have the ability to select questions and sections from that rubric which you want to automatically score, and then the system, Level AI system, reviews all the conversations for those key auto-scored questions. We call it InstaScore. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, the key part is in the intelligence driving this. So what we are showing here is, as I started as I mentioned at the beginning, conversational intelligence is hard. So what we are presenting here is a case study in which a true conversation intelligence system based on semantic intelligence technology, which we work with, how is it better than what you are the word matching based systems? This is a case study with a large technology company we work with for 18,400 conversations. And what we see here is these are some of the scenarios which they want to train their agents on. When hardware issues are mentioned by the customer, you should respond in XYZ way. When network issues are mentioned, you should respond in a certain way. What it turns out, a simple keyword matching system gets 20 hits. A semantic intelligence system gets 120 hits. That's the difference between matching and meaning, understanding matching and understanding meaning. An angry customer, a simple system which is working on looking for keywords, I'm unhappy, this is very frustrating, picks up 7 things, we pick up 70 things, because you know what? We express unhappiness in so many different ways. Human language is one of the most complex problems for AI systems. A confused customer, feature request. And overall, with this customer, we saw 600% overall improvement in being able to identify these situations. And guess what? This forms the foundation of the analytics platform, of the QA platform, of the agent assist platform. Because if you can't understand well, you can't act on it in agent assist. You can't auto score it well. You can't analyze it well. Moving on to another what does the promised land look like? How can you empower your teams? One of the key problems which we see with QA auditors and large QA teams is they have 100,000 conversations coming in. Which conversations? My time is limited. If I have to review only 2%, which 2% do I review? Because, God forbid, if I spend 2%, like my very valuable time coaching on the wrong problems with the wrong calls, then that time is wasted. And in contact centers, 80% of the times, people are reaching about password resets, I'm logged out of my account, or my order is delayed if it's an e-commerce company. So, that's not that interesting for coaching purposes. So what our AI system can develop, we call it Insta Review. We mine through all of the conversation bases and give recommendations to trainers and coaches that, hey, here are the 5 to 7% of conversations based on multiple variables which we analyze and mine in the background, which your team needs to focus on. And this is such a fascinating example of what the Forrester team talked about, which is combining AI with humans. It's not that the training and coaching can be done by a machine. You still need to work with your team leader. You still need to work with your coach. But we are making the team leader and coach's life interesting and easy and also highly impactful by making them spend their time on the most meaningful conversations. We call this feature Insta Review, which complements the Insta Score capability, because Insta Score is again a review, a score. It doesn't take away the training and coaching and deep engagement with the agent, which is so important for agent churn maintenance, which is so important for overall performance and learning. Another problem which we see often, as I was talking before, in the modern contact center, you should not settle for word clouds. So contact center leaders have no visibility on what the hell is going on in my contact center, because if the earlier example, someone is calling in to cancel a credit card or cancel my account, what word clouds show you cancel occurred 17 times or 700 times or 17,000 times. That's not what's happening in my contact center, right? So the ability to have a real-time detection system on top issues and top topics which are driving contact center volume, bubbling it up in real time, and giving the ability for contact center leaders to act on it as soon as possible is what we are working on. We call it emerging trends. It's almost like the Twitter's happening now feed, which enables contact center leaders to act fast. And finally, in terms of product features, This is, as I mentioned in our journey, we have talked about QA, we have talked about deep analytics, which is driven by semantic intelligence, and we have talked about instant review. For modern contact centers who really want to empower the agent and have marry of this human and machine capability, they have to solve this problem of helping the agent in real time. The agent's job is really, really hard. They have 2 to 12 weeks of training max. And then after that, they're supposed to master hundreds of topics and respond, guess what, in 120 seconds, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 7 minutes or less, and then go on every call. So we work with contact center teams as in this sort of crawl, walk, run journey when they have done the QA, they've done the analytics to support the agents in real time and solve not just issues about next best actions that I talk about, but knowledge integration, support, and real-time alerting and automation. So how does all of this show up in the contact center? What can be the impact of these technologies in the modern contact center? So I present a few quick case studies here. One is one of our customers who's a large US BPO, about 2,000 agents, and they were using a standard or incumbent speech analytics tool, which was using this word matching technology. When COVID happened, all of their agents went remote, and the first problem they were facing was they were shipping, like all of our audience today, they were shipping new hardware, new computers to all their agents. And guess what? As the agents went online, everyone said, most of the customers were saying, we are having audio issues in these calls, like when we have working from home all the time. They wanted to measure what percentage of their calls have audio issues. With their current call, 80 out of 1,000 calls were, with the current sort of speech analytics tool, 80 out of 1,000 calls were showing audio issues. With Level AI, 344 out of 1,000 calls were showing audio issues. The difference, matching versus meaning, right? They were listening for, I can't hear you in the previous word. Going forward, we were listening for audio issues in general, right? That's transformative, a 330% bump. The reason is this then went to their CIO, because a problem which is in 34% of your calls or 8% of your calls is the whole ball game, right? If you have 34% problem, you need to ship new hardware, you need to move your agents, you need to do another workforce planning situation, right? That's the actionable business difference of using the right tools at the right time. And I can talk about the other use cases as well, but on an average, we saw in this particular case, 2x improvement using semantic intelligence technology. Overall, what does the transformation look like for the entire business? On customer service, we reduce agent churn, because guess what? We can train better, we can coach better, and we can help better in real time. This is one of the biggest problems in this job market, where contact center teams are finding it really, really hard to hire, retain, and grow contact center agents. We have customers who have 5%, 2% agent churn, and we have customers who have 100% annual agent churn. And managing that journey is the top in every every contact center leader's agenda. So you can directly impact that metric here. The second is what all of us work for, delighting our customers. Better trained agent, better coached agents lead to higher CTAT, lead to higher revenue, lead to higher customer retention. You can transform QA teams from data auditors, call listeners, to true coaches and mentors and partners in their agent's journey. And most importantly, you can scale your business, as we see a lot of contact centers growing rapidly in COVID times, especially because people are more than ever looking for human touch, looking to be reassured, looking to their answers quickly, which leads to rapid expansion of teams. These technologies help you monitor, train, coach, and assist. And then for business teams, as we talked about earlier, you can empower not just what percentage of people are frustrated, but what are they saying about your product and services? When are the key moments when they churn or when they buy up from you? And if you can create those customer journeys, it leads to higher revenue, better products, and better services. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to hosting Christina now for a fireside chat. But that's all from
Awesome.
our side.
A lot of cool stories.
Yeah, thanks, Christina, for partnering with us on this. So you are an expert in the space, and whenever we chat, there are so many things for us to talk about. So I had to really limit myself today to figure out, like, okay, what are the top 5 things I can ask Christina. So, in your experience, the feedback loop
Yeah.
journey you talk about, right? What should be the right sort of orchestration of it or sequencing of it in your view? If I am a new VP of contact center, your advice would be like, where should I start from? Should I go after all of this, some of this, what order? How do you think about that? And does it, I'm sure it changes business maturity also, but would love to, I think our audience would be really interested.
Yeah, it's super. I mean, in a perfect world, is you snap your fingers and everything's all done, but that's not real life. So it's a question that we get all the time. And there's a couple of ways to look at this. And the first one is if we think about, like, okay, a lot of my clients come to me and say, hey, we want to look into this new AI assist, agent assist kind of stuff. We want to be able to help our agents in real time. And the first thing I ask is basically like, okay, hold on. Do you have analytics practice in place? Do you score? How many of your calls do you score? And do you know what your agents are struggling with, right? Because if the answer is no, then you run the risk of kind of like augmenting your agents without the necessary insights. You're kind of working in a vacuum. And how do you know what your agents need help with or where to start? So I always recommend starting on kind of like pulling it back, taking a second, before you start into the real-time stuff to figure out what are the problem areas. And you would do that, like you were saying earlier, through analytics and also through getting all of that scoring information to understand where the gaps are. But then when you're starting to look at the other side of the coin is, okay, yes, I have all of that and I figured it out and I know exactly what's wrong. Then it's about where should I start in the agent workflow to start kind of like augmenting, like what do I do first? And the thing that I would say that is most impactful is really like, what are the use cases that benefit all agents regardless of tenure? So whether it's your brand newest agent, they started yesterday, or someone who's been working with you for 10 years, there's a lot of like micro automations or something. Like you talked about summarizing the after call notes. So that's a really good example. It takes, like, I've heard between 1 minute to 3 minutes of time. Like that's huge. When you start looking at, we were talking to a health insurer that has like 40 million calls a year. 1 minute off of 40 million calls, like that's a lot of calls, right? That's a lot of time. So then, like, there's nothing but ROI there. That's an interesting place to start, just to start kind of thinking about carving off efficiency for every single agent. And at the same time, you're getting a lot of that ROI to fuel more projects, more improvements.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. And then I think one of the things you mentioned, which is on this topic, is have technology which helps agents across all tenure. Talk a little bit about that. I think that's really important because it links to the churn issue. Because at any given point of time, like I would say, on an average, every decent contact center has 30 to 50%
at the very minimum.
So almost half of your people are new, and then half the people are veterans. So sort of how do you almost sort of make sure that it's working for everyone, and like the veterans are getting value out of it, the newbies are getting value out of it?
And it's a really hard kind of needle to thread there, because if you think about the like you said, like there's always like I used to call it kind of like a rotating door of novices. You always have new people. And so those new people, you need things to be easy for them. They don't know anything really. Like they don't know what's going on, where all the stuff is, so that you need to help them kind of navigate. But you don't necessarily need to you need to think about it in like modules. Like I don't need the remedial class, right? Like I don't need the like 101, but there's people who do need the 101.
Right.
And then there's the things where, like we were talking about earlier, being able to spot, like now that you have technology like yours, where you're able to say, hey, these are the calls that Christina is struggling with. She's been here for 5 years, but she still, has things to improve on. So maybe there's objection handling. I'm not the best at it or something like that. Being able to then coach me on that and put those modules in front of me so that they're just especially relevant for my needs, and that it's like coaching me. But the other piece of that is basically like every agent has to struggle with all of the, you said like all the different systems they have to use, all of the different stuff. So if there's a way to help automate all of the steps that everyone does, there's no skill floor that like where that stops being useful. If I was an agent, like not having to go into 25 systems, like I don't care how long I've been there, I don't want to do that. Right. So make that easier for me. I'm happy to deal with that all the time. Like I would much more happily send that to the robot than deal with that myself, regardless of how tenured I am. But I might not need the, hey, did you know that the plan is XYZ? It's like, yeah, I don't need that help, and it's just going to become noise in my field of view. So you want to be kind of careful there.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. We see that often with in the Agent Assist product. When we show it to tenured agents, it's like, how do I put this away? And then when we show it to our newer agents, or not our, but our customers' newer agents, they're like, wow, how do I expand this? And but there's a very interesting learning curve. And how does the tool keep on learning with it? And so there's a lot of sort of customer experience there in augmenting properly, because if you do it too much, you're annoying. If you do it too little, you're not creating value. And to who you are doing it to, and being able to measure together.
And that was back to, and I told really we joked about this last time, but the idea was just like your customer's frustrated. Like you're not delivering value there. You're just telling me something that I could figure out all by myself. So how do I then, get the value from that conversation instead of just this like, okay, like thanks, but there's nothing I can do with that information. So if instead of saying, okay, your customer's frustrated, like, thank you. But if they can surface, and then this is what you do about it. Here, remember these tips that we talked, like that kind of thing. Then it's like, okay, now I might have been kind of in, deer in headlights mode because someone's mad at me. But if I have the tips on the side, then I'm like, okay, yes, I go through my checklist, I do my stuff, then I'm good to go. But it's one of those things where it's like everybody handles stressful situations differently, and being an agent is super stressful.
Yeah. So one question which we get often, Christina, from contact center leaders is that, I have a ton of this data. Some folks call it sort of unmined space. Some call it white space. And from my vantage point, the customer service function is the largest store of unstructured data in the enterprise. Customers, millions of customers. You talked about this health insurer. An average Fortune 500 gets 50 million calls a year. And they're calling and telling them why we don't like your service, or why you want to buy more, or what's great, what's not, how have you seen businesses use that information? How have you seen that journey happening now? Any examples or any sort of journeys which you have seen, and what recommendations you have for businesses around that area? I think because we are moving away from sort of traditional speech analytics. Speech analytics used to mean, word clouds and like high frustration in this part and low sentiment in that part, and which is great, but now can do more.
And my colleagues and we wrote a report this year on the mega trends in customer service, and one of the big trends was uncovering the dark data, which is another cute word to use there, but all of the unstructured data for the most part not being utilized by most companies. And I mean, contact centers, of course, have been recording conversations for decades, right? Like they've had the data, it's been there. But more recently, you mentioned that the speech to text piece is commoditized. There's really no reason why you're not transcribing calls at this point. Like there's a bajillion different vendors in the world just to do that part. So you have the data, it's probably transcribed. And so now we're seeing companies take that data and leveraging it to improve, the operations in the contact center, number one, like do it, like help customer service first, but then also expanding to customer experience, to marketing, to product, like beyond the business. And it's kind of similar to that story that you were saying about the BPO that at the beginning of the pandemic had to move some folks away and like started getting new insights based on that. But one of the clients I've worked with leveraged, conversation analytics capabilities at the beginning of the pandemic as well. But they really wanted to understand, we have no idea why our customers are calling us anymore, right? Like they had no idea, because all the things that they thought they knew before, they had all their call reasons, they had all the disposition codes, like everything was the way it was. And now it's completely different. So they had no visibility into their customers, why they were calling, and all of the self-service investments that they've made were basically useless because the call reasons aren't the same. So what they did was really, how do I now I have an understanding of why people are calling, and I can make decisions and I can start moving on those decisions. So like making new knowledge articles, more information on the website to be basically like, this is how we're helping you in the pandemic. Like, these are the information that you probably need, changing the IVR menu, like making things more easy for the customers to find. And then also agent facing content, like things have changed, policies have changed. So they were able to, take that information and then get going on it, because it was just basically, without that, I don't know how, I mean, they would have still been struggling with it today, probably. It was like all the things, like you even hear about Amazon's predictive algorithms changing because everyone wanted toilet paper and Purell. So it's like, all the models change overnight, and you have to make sure that you're looking at like what is happening though, and taking a look and making decisions based on
that. And that's so interesting, because what embedded in that is this issue of being reactive to what's coming in, and sort of or looking for knowing what you're looking for versus not knowing what you're looking for. Often, like in this particular example, like this COVID situation, your contact center leader did not know what he or she was looking for. Right. And that's where in AI, we have this sort of this idea of unsupervised learning versus supervised. And supervised, you're like, and I'm getting too geeky here, but in supervised, you're like, hey, these are the 10 potential things, and then map all of my data to that, like make clusters out of it. And unsupervised, you're like, hey, here's the data. What do you find? Right. And again, this is where modern tools should be headed. What did you find? Right. Go ahead. Here's a million calls. What did you find? I would posit like, and we have that technology, customers and businesses should be looking for that sort of unsupervised learning based tools. Tell me what did you find, because if you are giving a vendor, this is my ontology, or this is my category tree, this is how I used to label it. That changes, right? With a new product launch, with a new service
and
launch,
even if it didn't change, it's probably incomplete.
Incomplete, exactly right. Like, a human being is supposed to go in and keep on managing it. No. That doesn't make any sense, right? So that's where the word is moving again, of how you can do it on your own, how the machine can do it. Now you can massage that a little bit, what machine produces, to label it properly, and run reports on top of it.
That's the relationship that you were talking about earlier, where it's like, I'm not going to go looking in all the calls and like try to find some stuff. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm not a machine. I'm never going to do that. But if the machine surfaces up, like, we think these are interesting new trends, and I'm like, actually, that's not new. That's just this. And I put it in a bucket where it belongs, and the machine's like, okay. And then now we know, now that it learned something new. But if I saw a bunch of stuff coming up about, who knows what's going on, some new competitive product that came out, a new whatever, then it's like, I bet a bunch of the American telcos are getting a bunch of calls about the new Google data plans and stuff like that. Those weren't in the thing before. So it's like, Google might have been in there for a completely different reason, but now they're in there as a competitor. So then being able to have the machine surface that up, like, competitive mention, this is strange. This is not the tip. Like, we're not talking about T-Mobile versus Verizon anymore. This is a different player. So those are the kinds of things where, like, I'm not going to find that by myself, but the machine can help me, and then I can bring my own human brain to make it make sense in my world.
Right. No, I'm with you. That's a really good point. And so the other piece you talked about was this issue of, in real time, helping the agent or helping the manager and so on. What kind of use cases do you hear from customers? So real-time sort of training or coaching is one. Are there other real-time interventions which contact center and customer service leaders are looking to make? If you could talk about your experience there.
And there's a bunch of different scenarios. I think we've kind of like poked on them a little bit between the two of us, but there's a bunch of different scenarios that I've been seeing. And one of the most common one is that support for new agents, like we talked about earlier. Like, of course, your newest agents are going to be the ones that they need the most help. And of course, like, when it comes down to being an agent is so hard. Like, I have so much respect for the role. It is so difficult. But when, how do we leverage AI to give them that safety net so that they can fail in confidence? Like, they can try, because the nesting period is often not long enough. And often they're not really especially when they're not in the center anymore, they can't tap their friend on the shoulder and say, hey, how do you get to this thing? It's so much harder for them to know what to do. So being able to, when you're driving and you put Waze on and you know how to get there, you already know how to get there, but at least it's like, you're not going to miss your exit, and it'll tell you if a road's closed and the other way to get there. It just helps you just like get where you need to go. But that's the comfort that you want to provide your new agents. And the shape that takes is like you said earlier, surfacing up a knowledge article. Why do I have to search it? It's the same thing. Right? Like, just like, find it for me. I don't want to have to go and alt tab over to the knowledge base, like surface it up exactly when I need it. It's using the same technology, NLP. It's just using it without me having to ask. And then, the next best action around, like, okay, we see that this person is trying to do a claim. This is the steps on how you do the claim. And like, there might be opportunities to augment or like automate some of that for me so I don't have to do it. Here's the form. We've already completed it. Is this good? Like, that kind of stuff. As well as you mentioned the supervisor, which is a good point. The agent gets a lot of attention because there's a lot more of them and it's really hard. Right. But could you imagine being a supervisor in this environment where you're sitting on teams and you're getting hammered by all of your agents because they all need help, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to put my brain and who to focus on. It's hard. So being able to say, hey, so you have 10 agents that you're dealing with. This call's going great. This call's going great. This one's not going so great. This one might need your attention. So now I can focus exactly where I need to be, give my value to that agent. Maybe they're too panicked to even like request help from me, but I can at least, like Ashish, his call is like perfect sentiment. There's nothing wrong. But Christina's like drowning in this awful conversation. I can help her out. It's an easier way for me to add value. And those are the two kind of personas that need that real-time assistance. There's a lot of different flavors, but that's kind of what I generally hear from our clients.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And then we also see sometimes the ability is just alerting. So one is this idea of like, okay, we could jump into a call and help an agent, but we have this company called PagerDuty in the IT space where for software developers, if something is broken or like if you need the on-shift engineer to come by, like they'll like sort of send a notification. And we're working on ideas to sort of bring that to the contact center. If something is flaring up, can you just let the right people know, either in real time or post call or so on, that this is all the stuff which hit the fan.
Yeah, and especially if it's if you can see those anomalies coming in, right? Like if you know that there's a like 200% higher calls about XYZ. What the heck is going on? Like why? Right? Because then imagine being the agent on that side being like, oh, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. But if you're able to give them a real-time thing, there's an outage. We know, we're working on it. Or even patch that into the IVR as a message, like get ahead of it. There's a lot of additional work that you could do to prevent just like a lot of headache for everybody.
Absolutely. One of the other interesting topics where you and I have sort of agreed vigorously on are the limitations of AI, which is like, this is a little pet peeve of mine, because again, you stick AI on a website and a marketing brochure, like you're doing disservice, or sometimes like it can go either way. Sometimes you underpromise, sometimes you overpromise. I think there is huge promise to this the space, but at the same time, you have to be realistic. How do you when talking to customers, how do you walk that line? It's not a silver bullet. What does realism yet promise look like?
And I like to, I've worked at a number of different startups, and one of them was just an AI, like we just had a bunch of data scientists. So it wasn't even really a product. And that's where I really learned that AI is not magic. It's just math. It's just math. And so like, there's a lot of stuff you can do with math, and there's a lot of like cool, applications of AI, but it's not magic. So when you think about, and especially like, it's not quite where everyone wants to believe it is today. We don't have that magical wonderland of human-like robots. We're not there yet. So I think the biggest part, at least in the context of this conversation, that really drives me nuts, is the oh yeah, well, we'll automate 100% of our quality management. We'll just get rid of all of our quality analysts. I'm like, don't do that, right? First of all, and you actually, I was a little more aggressive on it in my piece where I said you can automate 100% of your scoring. You said up to 100%. I think that was a good to walk back a little bit, because I think that you should score 100% of the calls. You should have, you know, for the things that you can score, but not 100% of those 100%. Right? There's like a bit of a difference there in the sense that one of the stories that I love to tell, and I think I've already told you so, but this is for the audience, is about, you know, okay, we want to automate this QA scorecard. And sometimes it's just like, did they say the compliance statement? Yes, no. Did they greet the customer? Did they do this? Like binary statements. Yes, you can automate that. That is easy. That's fine. But when it's like, the one that I saw was the agent sufficiently empathetic? Like, you can't even calibrate that between two human beings, right? Like that's so hard. So like, don't think that the machine can figure it all out if you stuff enough keywords in there. It doesn't work like that. So you either have to have to kind of choose. You have to adjust your scorecard so that they are only binary options, or better option is to score the binary options with the machine, but then bring the human being in to evaluate the softer stuff to see, you know, like these soft skills, did they actually perform empathy in the right way? A machine has no idea what empathy is, right? Like that's not the same thing. But I know, you know, right? Like we can give that kind of determination, and we can coach an agent on soft skills, but a machine shouldn't do that. So that's an example. But those are the kinds of things where I'm just like, oh man. I'm sure you see it all the time too.
Exactly. We do, and this is where, and we think that we are leaders in this space, in the sense that we have been very forward leaning on this idea of understanding conversations deeply, and hence being able to auto score and so on. But at the same time, be very realistic with our customers and what is possible, right? And push. And this is one of those things, like you have to keep on pushing the boundary every day, but at the same time, not like promise the moon such that the entire space gets a bad name. Like, oh, this stuff doesn't work, or like, you know, that's the other risk. And so so you're absolutely right. But the good news is that it works in a lot of cases, and guess what? It's getting better every day, every week. And what we advise our customers is you should align with technologies and vendors who you can see can partner with you on that journey, as it is getting better day every week, and are realistic with you, and you are riding the right horse. Because let's say if you are working with a company which is matching stuff and kind of, then forget about it. Like you're not driving a self-driving car. You just don't have the hardware for it. You can't just wish it was that, right? So, but at the same time, being almost under promising and over delivering.
And I think that you guys showed me something that I thought was kind of interesting, in that there's a little bit, like, of course, like don't over promise. That's like, you know, the vendor no, I think. But when it comes down to give the software, like build inside the software the understanding that like there's going to be a person in this process. This isn't a fully automated process, and like build into the process that the software enables that human safety net and touch point. I haven't seen a lot of that when it comes to the opportunity for, yes, we are going to auto score these pieces because they're the ones that are very clearly supposed to be auto scored. But then there's the pieces that let's let the machine give it a shot, but we know we're not going to publish those until the person says, yes, that's right. No, that's wrong. But then you're also learning there, right? So like you're building learning into the process, which I think like at the end of the day, if people and machines are working together, just like being cognizant that they like make it easy for that to happen and make that part of the plan. Whereas like the alternative is having to go back and, you know, sanity check and look in the back, and it shouldn't be a coding exercise. It should be, you know, part of the front end workflow.
Yeah, and one of the things, and this is a really important issue. One of the things which we see with customers is Like when someone say, "Oh, we'll automate 100% of QA scoring," you're like, "Okay, great. How do you want to do 100%?" They're like, "Oh, we have these 6 pre-selected things which we
Oh,
automate
geez.
all the time." And I was like, "Man, that's interesting. Again, it solves a problem, but every business is different. An insurance company is different from a hotel or an
And
airlines
even
company.
between them,
Everyone has
you
their own
see
scorecard. So
two companies doing it completely
exactly.
differently. They have very different philosophies of what you should score. Some companies, even between the same industry, they just don't believe you should do subjective measures. That's fine. So they do that a different way. But then other companies
Exactly.
are like only subjective measures. So okay. So there's like no, or like we don't do scripts. We don't want to do any scripting. There's like so many different flavors of what good looks like. You kind of have to be a bit more flexible.
Absolutely. My last question for you is like, if I'm like tomorrow, if I become the VP of contact center at a fast growing business, and I come to you, it's like, hey, what should be my minimum CSS stack, right? I'm setting up this function, and I'm entering the modern age, right? I want to set up a modern CSS stack. What are the building blocks of it? What kind of tools I should be looking for? Maybe it's a very big question, but like, well, but yeah, what's your advice to them? Because we see that often with when I talk to customer and we talk to customers, they're like, there's so much noise, but what is the bare minimum? Like the other side of that coin is we see some customers who have tool proliferation. Like I know a customer who has like 6 different AI tools in their stack. I was like, that's 6 vendors, 6 integrations, 6 systems which have to talk to each other. So what's the
right.
MVP?
It is you ended on a tricky one, I think. But the this question is interesting because at the end of the day, I like to joke with my colleagues over here. If you were to just like, if you asked any contact center leader to go like this and they would replace their stack with something that is modern and new, everyone will be going like this, like for the rest of their day. They would not, like, no one would hesitate. I purely believe that. There's no one who said, we don't need to improve our contact center stack. Nobody says that. So a lot of the time you're inheriting a whole bunch of legacy stuff. There's a lot of like on-prem, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Like there's regulatory reasons. There's all sorts of, there's all sorts of reasons why. The first thing I would say is like, if you're going to start brand new, you would start with the cloud, right? Like you would start with a cloud contact center. And I think at the end of the day, people want to believe that like voice is dying. You said it, I think 30% of calls right now, like it is not going anywhere, not for a little while. And
I agree.
No, and I prefer in that scenario, sometimes talking on the phone in the contact center. Depends on what we're talking about. Cause it just depends. But I do believe that you need to have a connected way to have the digital channels as well. You need to have like awareness of all these things. But I think in the center of it, like the MVP or the kind of like core of the conversation there is really the agent's desktop. How do you make that part easy? Because the rest of it is plumbing to me. I don't care how many vendors you have behind that. It can be 2,000 different vendors if you wanted to. Don't do that. That's weird. But like if you wanted to, right? Like we live in the world today where everything should be enabled through microservices or whatever APIs, and there's no reason why integrations shouldn't be simple. The trend that I'm seeing a lot is that companies are saying, you know what, there aren't vendors out there that are fulfilling my need on the agent desktop side, so I'm going to build my own and I'm going to plug it in and it's going to be modular. But so there's that piece, so like what the agent sees, but then there's the data that fulfills that experience. And that's where, vendors like you guys come in, where it's like, where is that data coming from? And how is it being correlated against data that might be coming from somewhere else? So if you have all of the data that you store about the customer in the CRM, and you have, all of their journey data from the website, all of that kind of stuff, how do you bring that in context with the conversations that you have with the agent performance? Like, how do you bring all of that together? And there's a lot of different answers to that question. I don't think that I know the right one necessarily, but at the end of the day, I think it's about like, if the contact center exists, it's to have conversations with customers and have a place for customers to contact you at. And whether that's chat, messaging, voice, email, whatever you want to do, bots, being able to manage all of those conversations, understand what customers want, and be able to fulfill that as easily as possible. And on the agent side, it's like, you can collapse the tool problem. There's no reason why we can't, like why we have to alt tab ever again. That like I do not believe that there's a good reason for that.
Right.
But then on the bot side, it's like,
Right.
how do you bring them into the quality question? How do you like think about like the conversation with your customer more holistically, and like how that leads to customer outcomes? And like you said earlier, you know, all of that data is not just useful to me, the contact center person, it's useful to the business. So how do we expand that across? And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but it's more about thinking about it as like a holistic environment, as opposed to just like, I'm going to buy this tool and then this tool and then this tool, and these like skinny little stacks, like bringing it together in a way. And it doesn't need to be from the same vendor, but if you're going to do it with multiple pieces, then you have to think about it more modularly in a way that it's like, what is the core value that you're trying to drive, and how do you like plug all the bits in to make that happen? Maybe not the answer you were looking for, because it was kind of a non-answer, but there's no one answer.
And you're absolutely right. I think this is exactly what I was looking for. I think it'll be really helpful. I think it'll be really helpful because we see this issue all the time. Thank you so much, Christina, for your time today. I learned a lot. I think our audience also learned a lot. Yeah, it's fun, and we should do it more often. But this was really helpful, and look forward to our partnership with Forrester. Thank you so much.